I want to welcome in a resident, Katlyn Schwarzaelder. She is the Von Schwartz Doberman kennel owner and has been forced to evacuate. But you were there for the first couple of days, were you not, Katlyn?
Hi, Glenn. Yes, I was. So the derailment occurred on Friday evening, and we were there from Friday evening until Sunday evening at 8 p.m. when we were subsequently evacuated. My home and my business are both on Taggart Road, which is the road of the derailment. We have 27 acres. And from driveway to derailment is 1.2 miles, and from the edge of the property to the derailment is less than a half a mile, and the railroad tracks actually butt up to the back of the property by 10 feet.
Holy cow. So when you had the dogs in the kennel, everything was fine until they set this on fire, right?
I wouldn't say fine. To be honest with you, the area looks like a war zone. It looks like I would assume Ukraine to look like. There's military tankers every half mile. There's police personnel blockading roads. It's beyond anything imaginable, and it's so surreal to think that this is our home.
So when you are evacuated, you immediately take all of the dogs out, but then you have horses too, don't you?
Correct. So on Sunday evening, with the help of Bearded Brothers Moving Group, which is a local moving group in Ohio, they came with their moving trucks. We evacuated 30 dogs between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. the next morning. They were able to transport all of the cages and kennels, and I had my own vehicles to make multiple trips to transport the dogs. We had them all evacuated to a private residence by the next morning. It's less than an ideal situation, but it's all we have, in this time. The home is not fenced. The dogs do have to live in cages because there's not an appropriate setup. I mean, what kind of appropriate setup can you make in one evening?
Yeah.
So we evacuated the dogs between Sunday night and Monday morning. The original time of the controlled detonation was supposed to be 12 in the afternoon on Monday. At 11 o'clock, we were evacuating horses. I own one horse, and my neighbor has 8 other horses across the street. My horse is only 6 months old. She's a baby. And we had to load these horses onto trailers. They were all upset from the noises and the banging and the, just emergency personnel flying up and down the road. We had a terrible time trying to get them loaded onto trailers and evacuated. And believe it or not, our local police department, specifically Officer Fredericks, he actually came into the horse pastures with us and helped us move the horses out, because all we knew that, the controlled detonation was happening at noon. And, obviously there was a chance of a catastrophic failure prior to that. So we were all just kind of, wishing and hoping for the best and trying to get these animals to safety. And we did. And the controlled detonation didn't end up happening until I believe about 4:38 on Monday. And then kind of all hell broke loose.
So tell me now what happened after the explosion, because they've just come out. EPA has come out and said, "Oh, it's fine." But were there some people that stayed, or they left their animals behind?
Unfortunately, some people had to leave their animals because they didn't have a place to evacuate that was, animal friendly. Some people left the animals, and unfortunately, some of those animals have died. There are stories of a woman with chickens. I have spoken with her personally. Anytime there's any kind of animal death, of course, because I'm so close, I do a little more digging, and I've actually personally spoken to these people who have had herds of chickens die, who have had domestic foxes die. I have a personal friend whose family member's dog went out into the yard and never came back inside, a 2-year-old healthy dog. My personal dogs, just from the 2 days that they were there and exposed to just, the fire fumes and whatnot, whatever was, in the air prior to the detonation. I had 4 dogs needing to have emergency veterinarian services because they were projectile vomiting, very lethargic. So, I can't even imagine what it would be like for a human or an animal to be there during the controlled detonation or being there now. I can't imagine. We've had to go back a couple of times for supplies because, I had to move an entire business in one evening as well as my own personal things. And we've had to go back, and going back is extremely uncomfortable. It is, there's physical symptoms each and every time we go, from, itchy, burning, watery eyes, itchy, burny throat, coughing. It was a weird sensation of like your eyes pulsating. It almost felt like your eyes had a heartbeat. Our skin was so dry that even, your general moisturizers that you put on, after a shower have still not resolved the problem. So I can't imagine being back there now. Our plan is to most likely not go back ever. So we're just trying to fund all these things and trying to just figure out where life has to go from here.
So what is it like on the ground today? Because this detonation, happened a week ago Sunday, and the EPA is saying, oh, you can go back in. And some people are. But as you said, they're experiencing difficulties.
Yeah, so I was there yesterday. I was continuing to grab some more kennels for the dogs to make the situation here a little bit better. And we couldn't stand to be there for more than 30 minutes. So I don't know how people are doing it. What I know is still, as of yesterday, it doesn't look like our normal town of East Palestine in Darlington, Pennsylvania. It looks like something out of a movie. Like it's empty. I think the media is not appropriately displaying the fact that people aren't going back. Some people who didn't have the financial means to stay away any longer came back, but I think anybody who had an option did not go back.
Jeez. Okay, so they're now worried that all of this stuff is seeping into the water supply. And I know Pennsylvania has just closed down one of the plants, but the EPA said they had screened 291 homes near the crash site. It has not detected any levels of vinyl chloride or hydrogen chloride. And they said they still have to screen, but it's safe, and they're not finding anything in the water. You believe that?
My understanding is that, I have talked with some chemical engineers and environmental services, and essentially it's not supposed to be in the water just yet. From my understanding, the vinyl chloride is like water, and it travels through the ground and the soil like water. So, being, a mile, 1.2 miles away, like we are, other locations within a mile, it takes time for this stuff to travel to the ground. We've not had much rain. I think in the last 7 days, we've had 1 day of a little bit of rain. They're saying that right now, they're not surprised if it tests okay. But in 4, 5, 6 months from now, these levels could be astronomical, and that is the concern. That is my concern. That is others' concern. Not to mention the fact that physically being there is uncomfortable. And
you have 26, 27 acres. This is farm.
Correct.
This is farmland. What are people going to do? You're not going to be able to sell this land.
That's kind of why we're in a rock and a hard place right now. I have a 7,500 square foot facility. I have a beautiful home. I have other buildings that I've built on the property as well. So I have a great investment into this property that now went from, X amount of dollars to maybe being able to sell it for a fraction of what it's worth. Maybe. Who in their right mind would buy something something on Taggart Road right now. I couldn't imagine. So, now we're faced with the issue of little to no help from anybody. And we're faced with the issue of having to potentially own two large properties, and funding and the ability to own two pieces of land and two buildings and two facilities and pay, two taxes. I mean, it's going to be nearly impossible for a small business.
So, Katlyn, hold on for 1 minute. And when I come back, I want to ask you what we can do to help. I know our audience well enough to know, and we want to help. How can we help you? We'll get that answer from you here if you have one coming up in just a second. This is bad. We're looking at now, if you want to use that land again, I think you're going to have to dig up and take quite a bit off the topsoil. Not an expert in this, obviously, but that's what I'm seeing today. Environmental Protection Agency is like, yeah, don't worry. I don't believe them. Can I ask you that? Do you believe them, Katlyn?
So I can't comment on that, but what I can comment on is that we were told by Norfolk personnel that the agencies that were coming to our homes to test were from independent laboratories. Now, what I can tell you firsthand is that we had a gentleman from CTEC, which is the so-called independent laboratory. He was sitting in our driveway from the night of the derailment. And we had spoken to him, just very informally. And he said that, and I quote, we follow around the railroad when they make mistakes, and they are happy to have us here. And when, CTEC came to our facility to test our air, they had not offered the services of water at that point in time. They handed me a contract that essentially said that I needed to hold Norfolk, their affiliates, not limited to, but including CTEC, harmless of any future.
You didn't sign it.
In terms of, of course not.
Yeah, good.
But unfortunately, 340 other residents did sign it. Wow. And that's where my heart just breaks for these people, because we don't know the long-term repercussions of what these chemicals can do in our air, to our environments, to our homes, to our businesses. And they've signed their rights away in the hopes that they're getting help and the right answers from these organizations. And what I can tell you firsthand is that CTEC, the affiliate of Norfolk that came to test the air, was followed by the EPA. And what I can tell you is that we said, can the EPA by themselves come into our kennel? We do not sign this paper. And can they test themselves? Because they're a government organization that has the ability. They had the testing equipment with them. And the answer was absolutely not.
Why?
I can't tell you why.
Huh.
I just, I don't know.
So how could we help you? It sounds like if you could get some independent testing, that might be a help. But how could we help you?
I think that's the thing. The thing is that people who have the means to stay away and stay evacuated are wanting this independent testing done. Now, I've reached out to 3 different independent laboratories, and they've actually reached out to me as well. Core, Atlas, and Akron, I think, if I say that correctly. And their services, they want retainers between $15,000 and $50,000 to do these independent testings of the land, or of the air, soil, and water. Now, they do a whole reconnaissance of the property and the topography, and it's a very, intense procedure and protocol. And I mean, I think that the way to help imminently would be to help fund these, landowners and or people who have stayed evacuated and are demanding these private testings, to fund, essentially help us fund the private testing, because many people can't afford $15,000 to $50,000 up front. Especially, I spoke with a gentleman at Core Environmental Services this morning, and I said, these chemical engineers and people making intelligent and professional consensus are saying that this could be 6 to 8 months to a year from now where we're going to see answers. So if we're having to pay these kinds of retainers up front and have to pay them again maybe in 6 months, again in a year, it's just not feasible for people.
So Katlyn, I want you to hold on the phone. I want to get the names. If Mercury One won't help out on this, I'll pay for those themselves. We'll send some help up there to get your water and your land and your air tested properly and independently.
If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe to our channel so you'll be sure to see similar videos from Blaze TV with the added bonus of signaling YouTube that your voice and opinion still matters. And if you're looking for more great conservative content, check out one of the 2 videos suggested here.